I chose to believe in his soul. And that is a completely different energy than worry, anxiety, fear. He felt the difference. It went very fast when I shifted from fear and worry energy to believing in him. He shifted.
You must be some kind of therapist?
Today, I'm welcoming back to the podcast my friend Kim O. She is a coach, specifically calls herself a relational soul coach, as well as an author. And she's previously appeared on this podcast on episodes number 80 and 101. Kim O, welcome back to the show. Always good to see you.
Hi, Stephanie. So glad to be back.
So, as you know, and as some listeners might be following along, I've gotten to meet so many incredible people through doing this podcast work that it's not always necessary to bring new people onto the show because there are people I've talked to before who it's great to talk to again. And when I extend those invitations, I don't always know what we're going to talk about. I just know that I enjoy talking to you and that you're probably up to something interesting. So we were just having a nice little behind the scenes chat. You were showing me the parent and teen workbook journals that you've made for your clients. So I want to sort of frame up this discussion for our listeners with the understanding that you are one of a very small handful of people I know who do anything remotely similar to what I do. When I'm not recording these podcasts, which I only do once a week, I am primarily working with parents of ROGD teens and 20 somethings. And you also work with those teens and their families. And so it's not every day I get to talk shop with someone who's in that same world of coaching these families. And I just love to talk shop with you today. Part of our behind the scenes banter, we were talking about the idea of believing in the kid's soul. And I'm really interested in getting into that conversation.
When I started talking with parents and teens, I really noticed a parallel with my own parenting of my own child when he was a teen. So, yes, they have this added challenge of the ROGD, but I had a very stubborn, very confident, very know it all son. And he also had a father. We were divorced, kind of giving him messages about me that weren't so kind. And so it just felt like an uphill battle. So I can relate to that feeling of just utter despair and worry and anxiety. And it was overtaking me. My son's now 24. I can say that, and he's doing great. And we have a phenomenal, close relationship. And I do believe it's because of some of the attitudes, mindsets, and just what you just said. I chose to believe in his soul. And that is a completely different energy than worry, anxiety, fear. And it was my opportunity to, grow and practice that, what I would call consciousness, love, um, tuning into my higher self. And it really made all the difference in the world in my relationship with him and in my relationship with myself and how I then showed up in the world, to be honest.
You describe your son as willful and spirited and as having been a real handful when he was younger and thriving today. And I want to speak up in defense of the willful, spirited, even oppositional child, the defiant, maybe the highly sensitive child. I was that kind of kid, and I'm proud of the person that I've become. And I think these kids, they get a bad rap because they are frustrating, and parents can feel challenged by them, bowled over by them, have their limits tested. Parents can have more growth required of them by the willful, spirited, defiant child than by an easier kid. And so they can get a bad rap for all those reasons. And if parents aren't careful when dealing with that kind of temperament, the kid can really end up ruling the household, and the parent can surrender their parental authority prematurely when that's not really what the kid's growth demands. It might be what feels easier in the moment, but it's not really what's necessary. Um, but, when I think of a willful, spirited child, I think of someone with a lot of energy, passion, life force, someone who maybe has a sense from an early age that they're here to do something important, and that can manifest as grandiosity, which can be I had a lot of grandiosity in youth. I still have, like, under pressure, when I'm under attack, I go manic. If someone comes at me, yes, I will appear like a narcissist for a moment because 'cause I'll puff up, right? Sort of like animals do, right? If you come at them, I'm like a peacock or a porcupine, right? Some of us have that reaction to stress where we get bigger in reaction to it. Um and so, yeah, like in youth, the grandiosity, the ego, the disconnect from reality, the know-it-all energy when they clearly know very, very little. They know less than they ever will. All of those things can be really off-putting. Um, but I think that sometimes these energies point to a kid with a lot of potential who needs the right help molding that potential. And of course, only so much of that help can come from parents. They're going to need other types of mentors. And there's some messages that can only come from people they respect outside of the family. But I just wanted to take a moment to stand up for these kids, and even knowing like I am raising one of these kids myself, and it has its moments for sure. Um, what are your thoughts on that, Kim?
Yeah, well, so I'm gonna plug my little journal. So I created a journal for the teen and for the parent, and I can share more about that in a minute and why I did that. But it says on here, a teen's journal of self-celebration and connection. And so you're tuning into this space that I came in, I'm a very introverted, thoughtful person. And so in making these contacts with these parents and these kids, I recognize we're losing out on the celebration of a teen. Those years are so incredible. And part of what I talk about in this book as well is the neuroscience of the brain. And the teen years, the emotional brain is really activated. So is the survival brain. The executive brain is not in quite full function yet. It's under construction. So in the teen years are the highest, most intense emotions that you ever really feel. And so that's important to know, but also to kind of celebrate and allow the kid to have these intense feelings. And it's really how you react to them. And so the journal does bring a lot of this up. But that's why I think it's important in the journal. I get the teen excited about being a teen and what is your role? What is your job as a teen? And then we talk about what is the parent's job of parenting a teen. Um, but even before we get there, it's more, I ask questions in the journal that really inspire some curiosity, some exploration, and some fun, and it's really non-threatening. So I know a lot of these families don't really know where to begin or how to connect, and I'm sort of creating that way to connect. But let's celebrate these teens. Let's celebrate this time. I mean, all of us can admit, when we hear a song from our youth, doesn't it just bring you back? It brings you back with all of the emotions, all the feelings that you had. It can literally take you back to that moment. And so that's the phase they're in right now. So we can have understanding for them as a teen. And I actually have that in the journal that you might know what it's like to be exactly like your kid, but you know what it's like to be a teen. You know what it's like to have intense emotions. You know what it's like to wanna rebel and, not be buddy buddy with your parents. You know what it's like to just want that autonomy and to do whatever you want. Like, you know what that feels like to be a teen. And so I think it's really important to remember that and honor that and, you know, provide opportunities for that. I mean, really, for a parent, That's kind of what we do. It's kind of finding that middle road, right? Buddhism talks about the middle road. It's finding that middle road of balance of giving them autonomy, but also having really strong guardrails so that they are safe and protected and make it through this teen years. And so one of the ways that I do that, and I'm just going to go right there, is I call it check in and connect once a week as a family. You could call it a family meeting. You could give it some sort of fun, glamorous term. I think with couples I've coached, I called it the dragon slayer ritual, slaying your dragons, whatever. But anyway, it's check in and connect. And again, kids may buck up against that, but that's okay. You're not to be always liked as a parent. And you do things it's your opportunity to share with each other, hear each other, understand each other, and kind of cleverly drop little nuggets into their structured um, framework that they've created for themselves. My son was a know-it-all. He was arrogant. And so I had to get very clever to try to inject new information into this youthful brain of his. And that's why I feel like my approach is, I would call it clever. Um, it's safe and non-threatening. They don't even know what's coming. They don't even know what's happening. They just know that they're meeting with their parents and they're answering some funny questions and journaling about that, or journaling about what are they good at, or what's a bummer day like. I have questions like that in the journal, and it just opens up so many different directions you could go with that. And that's kind of what happens in coaching. I'm sure you could say the same in counseling. A simple question, a powerful question can just take you in all kinds of different directions. And I always find it so funny at the end of each coaching session, especially with the kids. And I'll say, what was the highlight of our time together? And the answers you get are so bizarre, aren't they? Like, it's nothing I would ever think struck them. Like, I remember one time I was coaching this person, and we just slightly mentioned something about her grandfather, whom I know as well. And that was her highlight because she learned something about her grandfather that she didn't know, and it was just so cool for her. So that's the fun thing about teens too. They surprise you. I love being surprised. I love learning something new from them. I love getting into their brain and hearing what they have to say. And so it's a way to get in there without being scared to get in there. I think at this time with this gender ideology topic, I think parents are actually afraid to get in there and hear what their kid has to say. So this provides a framework. I find that too. I find that parents just are so overwhelmed, and I get it. I felt overwhelmed with my kid, and so I can share a little bit about that, exactly what I started to do with my kid. Um, but it's such an overwhelmed feeling. It's almost like you're treading water and you can just barely come up for air. Um, and there's just so many different ways, and I should say it this way, and I need to do this and all of that. And then I just whittled it all down to what you said. It started with, I'm going to believe in his soul. At least I can believe in that, because I wanted him to feel positive energy from me. I wanted him to feel belief energy from me, because all he was feeling from me was worry, anxiety, fear. I was afraid my son was going to be a narcissist. He was going down that track. And, he had his time with his dad, and then he had time with me. And I knew that all I can control is his time with me, and I need to model, but I also knew energetically, like, how when someone's so focused on you, you can feel that energy and it's almost stifling. It's almost like, get off of me. And I feel like that's what happens with the ROGD kid. So if they can just feel some relief, some breathing room. So we can start with, let's believe in their soul. And So the opposite of believing in their soul is having, I'm so worried about them. I mean, the parents I talk to, they're just so anxious, and I get it. I was too. And so I've always been that person. I was meant to be a coach because I had to stop and go, I don't like how it feels for me to be in worry and anxiety and fear. This feels really bad. And I've learned a lot enough to know that I can shift my mindset. I can shift this. And so I had a faith that I was raised in. So there were certain verses that I clung to. And I'll just share one of them was from Jesus, where he said, don't worry about your life. Do not worry about your life. And I'm the type that, okay, I'm going to take that seriously. I'm going to actually believe because I had experienced miracles in my life. I had experienced when I did believe in things like, or quotations like, do not worry about your life. And this is why I like the Stoics and the sages. They have quotes because they were living life too. They felt fear and worry. They saw people in fear and worry. And these quotes, if you embody them, if you take them in, and make them your own, they can shift your life. And so I did. I was like, I'm not going to worry about his life, or I'm not going to worry about him. I'm going to believe in him. And so I'm kind of this silly girl. And so when we would get into it, first I had to stop reacting. So I really had to practice that self control and not react to his nastiness, because trust me, it could be really nasty. And um, I would just look at him and I would just visualize, oh, that's his wound speaking. That's his pain speaking. That's not my kid. That's not the divine spark that he is. That's his pain. So from that space, then I had compassion. So you have to see them with compassion before you can then move on to the next step. So I was like, dang, this kid must be really hurting to be saying what he's saying, to have the tone he has, because that's not the truth of him. The truth is that he's actually love. He's pure love. It's just hidden from all this pain. So from that point, in my head, I'm just believing in his soul and I'm looking at him and I'm like doing little cheers in my head. This is my method. This is what works for me. Everybody has their own way of helping you stay in that energy of believing in him. Sometimes it's a gesture. Maybe you just put your hand on your heart. Whatever it is you need to do. Some people will like pinch themselves to remember, no, I'm believing in him and I'm like cheering. And maybe you have a song that helps you and you're singing it in your head. Maybe you have a verse to believe in him and believe in his soul. And all I can say is it's powerful and I call it magical pixie dust because he felt the difference. It went very fast when I shifted from fear and worry energy to believing in him. He shifted. He shifted. And things just started to calm down. And I think he just felt that resilience. Like it's believing in him rather than having pity on him. Who wants pity? Who wants, like, oh no, we don't want that. We want empowerment. So I believed in him. And of course, it wasn't perfect, and I'm not perfect. But that's the other thing that I have in the journal too, is I basically talk about in the parenting journal, there's extra pages for parents. Otherwise, a lot of it's the same. But I talk about it's okay to be imperfect. In fact, I want you to be. And I almost look forward to those opportunities where I lost my cool and I would just stop and say, I totally lost my cool. I'm so sorry. I raised my voice. I don't like raising my voice. I don't want to raise my voice. That's not fair to you. And he was right there with me hearing that. And I would give the full apology of like, I raised my voice. I'm really working on this. And I would even bring him in on a solution like, hey, this seems to happen every time we are doing this or we're talking about this. What is there a signal you can give me or like how you can help me? Like, oh, Kim or mom, you're you're starting to go there. So he feels the humanity of me, but he also gets to experience restoration. What does that look like? What does conflict resolution look like? It's not about canceling someone the moment they don't act the way you want them to. That will never work. You will never have healthy relationships. Um, so So I would do that. And then at the end, after I've completely apologized, I would say, "Now you had a part in this too." Because that finishes it, because he did have a part. He was being nasty. But once he heard my apology, then he could actually hear and connect with me and acknowledge, "Yeah, I was, and I'll work on that too." So, there's ways to get clever and to get even the most confident know-it-all to soften.
I like when you said that you almost look forward to those moments that gave you an opportunity to apologize. Now, this is the good news, right? That you don't have to be perfect because relationships get stronger through this process of rupture and repair. There were so many moments that you were talking that I had some little comment I would have loved to interject, but I was like, "Oh, she's on a roll. I'm gonna hold it all back." I got my list here of
Oh,
things we
good.
might be able to circle back to at some point, but on that last note, it reminds me I have a client inquiry form that people can fill out if they're interested in working with me. So I was looking at a new client intake document from a client I haven't even met yet. And in my intake documents for new clients, I ask some question about, what do you think you could do differently? What do you think the process of change might require from you? Or if you could go back in time, what would have you done differently in the past? Some questions like that. And, here's the mom filling this out. I've not even met this person yet, but I see an answer along the lines of, I think I've been, overly intrusive as a mother. I've been in my kid's business too much. I'm always trying to give advice, something like that. And I read that and I'm like, great, we've got material to work with already. I mean, here's something that the mom is telling me she can own up to. That's material for what I call a strategic apology. So what you call being clever, I like that because there's a lightness. There's like a lightness and wittiness and playfulness in the word clever. I think the word strategic, my complaint about it is that it feels a little heavy and calculating. But I do use the word strategic when I'm doing parent coaching and an ROGD repair in the sense that I want to convey to people, hey, your kid's not done yet, okay? And they're in a particular state of mind. You have to be careful with that state of mind. You can't be all willy-nilly with it. They don't have the ego strength and maturity that you have. You don't want to mess this up, so be strategic, but I like your word clever. So, on that note, I teach something I call strategic apologizing. And that's where you look at what can you genuinely take responsibility for here, right? Because your kid's going to be coming at you with all this aggression. However that manifests, maybe they're nasty, like your kid was. Maybe they're passive aggressive. Maybe they express that aggression in other ways or through pulling away. But they have their grievances with you. And they've mixed up the idea of gender identity with all of their other grievances. So it gets to the point where whatever goes wrong in a kid's day, whatever emotion they're feeling, all roads lead to gender, right? Their brain starts to look through this filter of everything is about my gender. I have a stomach ache. It's because of my gender, right? I'm I'm PMSing. It's because of my gender. Whatever the problem might be, it's my gender, right? So parent-child relational problems become excessively mapped to gender as well. And so you as a parent are actually doing something strategic and wise when you take responsibility for the places in your parenting that you could have done better and you own up to that and you issue a strategic apology for that, right? You're absorbing some of the blows of the aggression, of the grievances that they're naturally going to be looking to express as part of individuating from you. And you're helping them build the emotional intelligence of disentangling this mass of knotted up emotion that's been uninsightfully just linked to this idea of gender, right? You're taking all of this complaint energy coming from them and helping them without arguing with them at all, right? While blaming yourself, you are saying, "Oh, this is actually something I should have, could have, would have done better, and I apologize, and I see how that affected you." By doing that, you're actually helping untangle the knots in your brain in their brain. You're giving some place for that aggression to go, and you're starting to introduce the opposite of learned helplessness, the opposite of the victim mentality, which is the idea that I can actually solve my problems. including relationally, which is one of the biggest parts of life, including through language, which is what separates the humans from the apes, right, is our advanced linguistic capacity. Um, I can if I have a problem with someone in my life, if there's something not working for me here, we can communicate and we can deal with our problems and we can change things. And oh, the thing I didn't like, that always just left me feeling so frustrated with my parent. You mean there's a way to negotiate that? You mean there's I can make a difference in my life? You start doing away with that helplessness and that victim mentality. You start giving them the feeling of real problem solving, and they start to develop a taste for that and real confidence. I mean, there's so much good that can come out of that relational repair.
I love that you recognized when I said I looked forward to it, and I honestly did, because I knew he needed to experience humility in action. And yeah, I can honestly say I messed up a lot, but I also did well a lot because I did the restoration. And I kept thinking about how I so look forward to the day when I hear him talking to his kids with that full apology and owning up to where he made mistakes, and then I'm sure I got obnoxious about it because then we started to really, get along great. And, I was going through my healing journey and I would remember times that I really felt like I wronged him. And I would call him up, send him a text and be like, "Dude, I cannot believe, do you remember that time that I took your hat, I threw it out the window?" Just different things like that. And I would say, "I'm so sorry for that." And he just by that time, it's so beautiful because by that time, he doesn't need the apologies anymore. I still do them, but he doesn't need them. The love is now there, the trust is now there. I actually wanna share this too. So, it probably came from a very astute, amazing counselor that I had in my, 30s, I would say my early 30s, and he would share with me how every week he would say to his kids, "How did I do at loving you this week?" And they would share with him, and then he would ask, "How can I improve?" And I was just blown away by that. And so I guess I wanna give credit to him for really instilling in me this idea of literally taking time to communicate with your kid in a family meeting, or like I'm calling it the check-in and connect, where you each have a journal, where you get to spend some time alone and then sharing your answers together. And I really do believe children, kids, teens, they do want to be seen so desperately. They might like act like they don't want to be seen, but they do want to be seen and they want to be understood. And this is their opportunity. But it is also the opportunity for the parent to be seen and understood too. And I think that's really important because we've created a world for so many of these kids where it's just all about them. And yes, they have an immature brain, but you have to start planting those seeds. And you described it so well. Because to me, I believe like I created these journals to fight against all of the main points of gender ideology. Canceling people, not being able to discuss a hot topic with someone, being hurt by discussing a hot topic with someone. I address all of that in my clever little way in this journal. And so it's really slowly planting those seeds. And as many detransitioners will tell you, it's always shocking and surprising the last straw that caused them to just give up the ideology and detransition. And I'm fascinated by those stories, and I believe in those stories, and so that's why I believe in their soul, because you don't know what little seed is gonna take root and just be the last straw where they can't hold on to it. Because here's what I can tell you, and this is positive news for you parents. It's low vibration. It's low energy. It's lacking in love. It's lacking in joy. It's lacking in peace. So yes, kids who are enraptured by it are in pain because it's void of those things. It's void of common, truth in neuroscience. It's void of truth in healthy communication. In order to uphold that ideology, it's in all of these negative, low vibe, uncomfortable, gross feelings. And you can only hold on to that so long before it just takes you down. And so when we start practicing the belief energy, and really, I know parents, they all just want to focus on the kid. That's why my favorite way to coach is to coach the kid and then the parent. And I literally am sharing with the parent what I just did with their kid because the parent needs it too. And so they're learning and they're growing, and everyone's growing at the same time with all these truths um, that are light and love and joy. And it's just so diametrically opposed. So I do believe in the power and love, the power of love. I believe in that energy and that vibration, and that it is stronger than the negative energy.
Your trans-identified kid won't listen to reason because reason isn't what they need right now. They need a parent who knows how to communicate in an empathic yet strategic manner. ROGD Repair gives you over 120 lessons in the psychology and communication tools that actually work when normal parenting doesn't. Plus, RepairBot, your 24/7 AI coach trained on my entire body of work, ready to help you navigate tough moments in real time. Visit rogdrepair.com and use code SOMETherapist2026 to take half off your first month. You're helping me connect some dots as we're speaking, and let me see if I can articulate this in a way that makes sense, because I don't know if
Okay.
it's gonna make sense when it comes out of my mouth. But, earlier, Kim, when you were saying you know what it feels like to be a teenager, parents, when you were saying all of that, I made a little note. Some parents never rebelled, and I wanted to talk to you about this particular kind of parent that I've seen really struggle, the parent who never went through a rebellious phase and now has an entitled, ungrateful, and yes, rebellious teenager. That parent, oh my goodness, do they struggle, and they have a really hard time relating to teenage rebellion, but there's an important developmental process that they missed out on by not rebelling. And these might be successful people by all worldly standards. They might be conscientious and hardworking and, have financial security. But if they themselves never went through a rebellious phase, then then there's an empathy gap with their child. And I think there might be something that's missing for them too. And as I'm trying to put my finger on it, I'm thinking about this Jordan Peterson lecture that I accidentally listened to last night. So before we hit record, I was telling you how I accidentally started listening to this Jordan Peterson lecture. I was listening to something else and it like pocket dialed this particular episode. And I'm like, okay, I guess I'm listening to Jordan Peterson now. Let's see what he has to say. And in this lecture, he's Jordan Peterson. It was 2 hours. He went all over the place, right? All over the place. Um,
But we love him so much.
we do. Um, but he was saying, and if anyone wants to look it up, it was like released in late July on his podcast, but it was originally recorded as a live lecture in 2024. He talks about some Bible stories. Um, he, I'm going to butcher this. I'm not fairly representing what he said, but he said something about how the spirit of adventure and the voice of conscience are both God within us. Um, God telling us what to do, right? God directing us to act in faith. Again, whether it's something in us that says, I'm going to go, go out on this limb that I'm called to walk out on. I'm going to go risk my life and do something that's never been done before or something that looks impossible because of some calling in me, whether it's that or whether it's that little voice that tells you right from wrong that you can either ignore or listen to. Um, and that consciousness in us that he says is God talking to us, compelling us, I think is linked with the spirit of rebellion. And that's my interpretation, right? He calls it the spirit of adventure, but I think rebellion is just the sloppiest, most raw and immature form that this energy in us takes in youth when we're like, I know I need to do something with myself, with my energy. And I know that in order to do this, it has to be different from what I was taught. Because if it matches what I was taught, then I'm just, what am I? Am I even a unique individual? Is there anything special about me? Or am I just, doing what my parents or my teachers or my religion or my whatever taught me to do? So in youth, it takes the most immature form it'll ever take. But I think there's an impulse there that is leading us toward finding our calling, our purpose, and that I'm maybe even gonna take the position. I'm not clinging to any of these positions. I'm thinking them through as I speak, but that we can't truly find our purpose without some of the messiness that comes out in that process. And so it makes me wonder, for the parents who never rebelled, for the ones who are having a really hard time finding any empathy for their child who is rebellious and ungrateful and entitled and grandiose and fragile, and who themselves are maybe conscientious, responsible, hardworking, but maybe not super individuated, maybe not deeply spiritual. Um, I think there's a blind spot for them and something that gets really triggered by seeing that part of their kid that's trying to grow in that way. And I think those are the parents who, from my perspective, sometimes seem to have the hardest time with this faith in their child when we talk about believing in the child's soul, which is, I think, a really crucial part of the parent coaching work that I do. I was telling you before we started recording, and I'll say to my audience, there are a number of factors that I'm looking at when I'm performing some background mental calculation on what is the likelihood that I can help this family, right? Because I have parent coaching clients coming to me all the time, always meeting new people, looking for my help. I'm only willing to work with so many people at a time. I like to go deep. I don't do one offs anymore. I'm like, we're either doing this 8-week series or I'm not even going to bother because I need to get to know you. If you're not willing to invest the time with me to really get to know you, then just sign up for my course. Do the homework on your own time, right? If you want to work with me one on one, we're going to go deep. I'm going to really get to know you. And in that coaching work, as I'm getting to know someone and their family, and I'm like, okay, can I help them? What's the chance that this is going to work? There are a number of factors that I'm looking at that are kind of going into those mental calculations. And one of those factors is, do I feel fondness for the kid as the parent describes the kid to me? Can I tap into the parent's love for the kid, their vision for the kid, their faith in the kid's potential? Does the parent have within them a vision of who their kid is capable of being? And that's not the same as a prescription. That's not the same as my kid needs to be a doctor. She needs to marry a lawyer. Like, it's not that, right? My kid must always live within 30 miles of me in Georgia. No, I'm not saying that you have a vision for the walls that and constraints that you need to box your kid in. I'm saying, like, do you have faith in who that person is at their core and in the fact that they're in a process of becoming? And do you see that you have a really important role to play here? You are their creator. You are literally their creator. You are the creator of this being. Do you, as their creator, have faith in the fact that they're not done yet, and there's something as mucky as this process is, as ugly as they're being right now, perhaps behaviorally. Do you have faith that there's something in them that's trying to emerge that's good here? And that requires you to water the right seeds, not just pull the weeds, which is very tempting because those weeds can be big and nasty and ugly and really get all your attention. Not just pull those weeds, though, but water the seeds of the flowers and fruits that you want to see.
Yeah, absolutely, and we know what can get in the way of that, um, I believe is, like you said, it could be they weren't rebellious, when they were a kid, but also, um, there's guilt. There's people struggle with self-forgiveness. So that's why I love the opportunity to coach both the kid and the parent because all of those challenges come up. I mean, I believe the beauty of life is trials come for us to see, "Oh, I could heal that." And, like I was sharing before, that I was just filled with so much worry. Now, I can relate to not being rebellious because I was not rebellious as a kid. I told the line and because I experienced childhood trauma at the age of 4, I was afraid to actually be myself. So I was very careful to toe the line and not, you know, make a mistake socially, at school, um, and in general. So, I can relate to that, and now I just feel like I'm just so much more free. Um, but you keep bringing back what I feel is such a good metaphor is planting these seeds so that your kid can have roots. And I think it's a really beautiful metaphor to imagine that your job as parent is to plant these seeds. And these are really powerful seeds that root your kid. And, I'm just going to share that that was one thing I felt like I did have as a kid was roots. And we went to church every Sunday. And I'm not a churchgoer today, but we went to church every Sunday. And I thought about how, even as a kid, I'm in Sunday school and I'm singing every week, Jesus loves the little children, all the children of the world. Every week I'm getting these really profound teachings about being loving, being kind, with a story to follow with it, and seeing my parents going, and all of us being in the car together. And, all those things that happen in the car, the whole family's in the car to go to church, and even sitting in the pew the older you get, and just what could happen between siblings there, and just the whole experience to me was very rooting, and it was creating a foundation that became unshakable. So even though I don't follow the faith of my childhood, it's so powerful, the experience of that leadership my parents had, and knowing, because what I'm realizing with these kids, they don't even know, I don't even know if they know, love your neighbor as yourself, like the golden rule, do unto others what you would want done unto you. I don't think they know that. And that is a seed that will take root where they'll actually care that others are treated well, that their parents are even treated well, um, rather than this idea of just being so sensitive and vulnerable to any offense, So that is part of my journal as well as I throw in really poignant um, quotes from sages and Stoics, and maybe even from the Bible. But I go from even poets, there's a few in there from some poets that I really love, to really just contemplate and maybe put into your own words. What does that mean to you? And so to me, that is rooting these kids so that when the strong winds come, they won't be blown down. But I feel like they were taken in by this gender ideology because somewhere there's just missing those roots. And I also believe that we were just all blindsided by social media and the impact of it, and not knowing how strict we needed to be with it. Thank God the research is happening now where we're understanding, like you had a guest on or you're gonna have a guest on. I might have had access to it sooner, but there will be a guest that talks about where he basically doesn't believe kids should have any social media at
Oh, no,
all on
that's
a
an episode that just came out. You're talking about Johann de Souza.
yeah, and I'm in such full agreement because of the deterioration that I'm seeing in kids and families, and so what happens is so let's say there weren't strong seeds planted, but even if there are strong seeds planted, it's very hard for an immature brain to handle social media. They actually are designed to not have self-control right now. It's the executive brain of the parents that has to come in and create those guardrails because they do not have self-control. That's one area where you do not want them to explore their rebelliousness. Um, so I was gonna share too, I loved how we were sharing about rebellion, and I'm, an adventurous type of person, and so I remember my son telling me one day, "You were the fun parent," and I found that so odd because his dad is actually pretty fun, but I was the fun parent, but I realized, yeah, I took my son on trips where we could be super wild and free, and, I have this silly side, so we would go there, whether we're swimming, whether we're in the car, so I'm the type of parent that would, create games in the car rather than him, on a iPad or something, we're playing, I called it first cactus, last cactus. So here in Arizona in Phoenix, we have saguaros, and when you drive up north to Flagstaff or Sedona, you have all these saguaros, and then they just keep getting less and less and less, and so we'd both be looking out the window for when you saw the last cactus, and then on the way home, who sees the first cactus? Saguaro cactus. So I was just always doing things like that. In a restaurant, I would bring Uno, and we would play Uno. So these seem minor, but they're huge. They're huge. You are connecting with your kid. You are to me, when you're playing a game, you can actually talk about different subjects or ideas will come up or it's funny too, I'm a hairstylist as well, so when I'm cutting my son's hair, I'm not the type of parent that asks my son a lot of questions, he does not wanna be asked questions, but when I'm cutting his hair, he tells me everything.
Hmm.
I know everything about his life when I'm cutting his hair, so that's also my advice is to have so much fun, to play, you know, take the ski trip, get out on the boat, go overseas, um, turn off the phones, have them off for 6 weeks, you will have a different kid. And I do see that, I'm sure you see that too, I see that over and over again when parents get their kids out in the environment for extended period of time, it's amazing. So I might have gotten off on a tangent there, but I think really powerful, important little nuggets for parents to I didn't care if a kid may buck up against you, but if you just, like, bring that Uno game, play the game, they'll like it. They really will. Like, I think most kids do than not. I would also so it's so easy to do this now, but, in my last relationship, he had daughters, and when we would go on trips, I would come with a stack of cards with questions. Goofy questions, and that's part of my journal. I have goofy, super goofy, silly questions in here because it brings up other topics. And the kids, they all liked it. It was really fun. We would all have to answer some crazy question that I came up with. So, it's ways to celebrate their individuality, their uniqueness, and that everyone has a different answer, but also, get curious, learn something about them, and have fun.
So easy to forget to have fun and to forget that kids thrive on fun. Sometimes it feels like there's just some like point in time when things broke and a family just stopped having fun and it was kind of an abrupt transition. The thing is, when you're not doing fun things, you notice what the kid is doing that you don't like, and that's usually the screen stuff, right? And then you can end up in this power struggle. where suppose you have given your kid an electronic device and you haven't set clear limits and expectations. Then what I hear a lot of is suggestion-based parenting.
Yeah.
I would just wanna remind parents of teenagers, as a default rule of thumb, it's not true 100% of the time, but it's true more often than not. Your kids don't care about your suggestions, right? Your opinion has been noted. If you think they ought to do this rather than that, it's, yeah, whatever, okay.
They're
Suggestion
too
noted.
smart for that. They know, like, they know they can walk all over you. They know they can bulldoze you. Make no
So,
mistake.
the thing is, like, you have to be very clear on what is up for negotiation and what is not. If you make something sound optional, it's going to be treated as optional, right? So, it's actually the kinder thing to do to set very clear limits and then give options, right? If the device, so with devices, my kind of general rule is wait as long as you can to give it. If and when you do give it, never create the expectation of privacy or unlimited use. So from the outset of giving a device, this is not a private space and your use is up to me. I can give it, I can take it away. Like, starting rule might be X amount of time per day or week, but I can change that number. Also important that time can be taken away, but you're never gonna get extra time as a reward because that sets up the device as the reward, and it's already rewarding enough in the wrong ways. So it's not like if you do something good, you get extra screen time and that's your reward. So we wanna have an upper limit that's solid and a lower limit that is contingent on behavior and how they seem to be handling the device responsibly or not. So those are my kind of general principles around giving kids access to devices. Um, but when you see this sort of suggestion parenting and the power struggle, the parent with weak boundaries, the parent who's not able to simply set the rule that they're comfortable with and enforce it, then it's like the parent starts complaining and criticizing the kid for being on their device. And the message is not at all clear to the kid because, from the kid's perspective, it's like, well, this is what I want to do. Are you saying I'm a bad kid for wanting to do this? What are you saying? Right. And it starts getting really toxic in the relationship rather than the parent setting clearer, firmer boundaries from the beginning. And then they don't have to be any of these suggestions, and if the device or whatever the unwanted behavior is off limits, then the options you're giving are all options that you would be happy for them to choose between. But my point in saying this is that it's really easy to notice when your kid is doing something that you don't like to see them doing, like burying their face in a screen, but what we have to remember in those moments is, have we created an environment where that's the lowest common denominator, where that's what we do by default? Because if we have, that's our responsibility, and we have to both set clearer limits, but also think about, well, what should be happening instead? And that's where the fun part comes in, right? That's
Yeah.
where, like, if we're in the car, are we playing a game? Like, I'm a punch buggy enthusiast. In our household, I'm never not playing punch buggy, and we pay
I don't know
slug
what that
bug?
is.
Slug bug?
We
It's where you hit someone when you
Slug
see
bug, no return?
a VW bug.
Oh, yes, stuff like that, yes.
Like,
Yes.
I'm never not playing punch buggy. Like, we could be having the most serious conversation. I don't the kids could not it could just be me and my husband. We could be having the most serious conversation, punch buggy orange. Like, I never quit, okay? Now we play cyber slap, and, on our road trip, we invented Waymo WAP, which comes with a song, which makes the kids groan, but it's, a Waymo WAP, a Waymo WAP, a Waymo WAP, a Waymo WAP, a in the jungle, the
The m
concrete jungle, the Waymos drive themselves. Um, yeah, I mean, it's like it's easy to lose our humor, our playfulness, our creativity and imagination, and then we enter this downward spiral and kids are bored. And it's because 'cause you're not engaging enough and we're not, yeah, and there is a lot of pressure on families, though, on parents to do the entertainment. It's because families are smaller and busier, because your kids have fewer siblings. right? There's less free roaming. That does create an environment where it's almost like this manic degree of pressure on parents to be constantly entertaining their kids. So I don't want to sound like I'm not empathetic toward the struggle, because I really am. Like, it's like you have all these adult responsibilities to manage: work, home, finances, health, medical, maybe even legal. You got all that stuff. And then on top of it, you got to be like, "Oh yeah, kids have an appetite for fun." And am I supplying the fun? Do they have access to fun? Because if you have 2 kids instead of 7, and you're in this nuclear family in an age when kids aren't just going outside to play, then there really is more pressure on you to be coming up with the creative ideas.
Yeah. No, I love that. I think we're speaking the same language. I have to throw in there, I would even I just made up games. So, like the alphabet, take any topic. You have to name a fruit. I would start with the letter A, then he'd have to do B, then C.
I
Like,
play that
I
same game.
was constantly doing that, and then we would get crazy in cities or, it just,
Yep.
it just keeps things light and it keeps connection, but it's also okay for them to be bored. But I was gonna say this is where pets, I think, come in.
Mhm.
Pets are, phenomenal for them to have chores. That's the other thing, we're doing too much for these kids.
Mm.
Um, they need chores. Don't have a house cleaner, get rid of the house cleaner. I mean, you really want your kid to know, pers personal responsibility, doing their own laundry, like, all of that, I think is really, really key as well, because that's something to do too, and then to make it fun.
Mm.
I mean, let's watch Mary Poppins, let's make life fun.
I see a lot of people struggling with that, and oftentimes there's some kind of rationale of like, "Oh, but they work so hard in school. I wanna provide for them. I wanna," and what I my philosophy on this is, and I will say this to kids, and I will give this to parents to say to their kids, is, life is gonna throw you a lot of curveballs. There are gonna be periods where you're really busy and you're juggling a lot of responsibilities. You might be in college and working a job and dating someone new and, like, member of a club. You are gonna have a lot on your plate. And all the domestic stuff, the, like, hygiene and chores and all of that basic stuff, you want that functioning on autopilot. You don't want that to be adding to your stress. You want it running smoothly in the background, and you wanna be going to the gym regularly or doing your workouts or whatever, so that you can focus on the things that really matter to you without your health or your home falling apart, with your fridge and your chest of drawers fully stocked. Um, we need to get you ready for that now. So the idea that, putting away your laundry or vacuuming your room or whatever it might be is like, "Oh, such a burden," that's gotta go, because this is easy peasy. We need to get you to a point where you've done this thousands of times. You know you can do it quickly and easily. You know that you can listen to your favorite podcast while you're doing it. Like, this part needs to be easy. And as long as you're showing that you think this is hard, that just means you need to do it more until we can see that we're all on the same page, that you know that this is easy. You know you can maintain these areas of your life, no problem, and focus that, "Oh, this is so hard," energy of struggle on things that are actually hard.
Yeah. I mean, you just reminded me of the quote, "Prepare the child for the road, not the road for the child." And I have that in my journal too. It's just such a good reminder. You're preparing your child for the road because the road has so many curves and twists, and you um you don't want to create a perfect road for them. You don't. Um you want to just prepare them for that conflict, for the fun, for all of it, for life. And that's such a beautiful foundation to give them. But there's another quote that I love. It's life has 10,000 joys and 10,000 sorrows. And I swear if that quote was taught to me as a kid, because I believe I would have been receptive to it, because even now, when I'm going through a season that's really sorrowful or hard, I just know it's not going to last. And then there's joy around the corner. And that truly is life. It's like you're gonna have joys, and then you're gonna have the deepest sorrows, and then you'll have another joy. I mean, it just keeps going, and everywhere in between. But to me, that is a great foundation to teach your children from the beginning. I've got some parents that I know that at the end of each night with their little girls, they talk about the rose of the day and the thorn of the day. And I tell these parents, "You guys have to know how impressed I am with you." Just that they came up with that and they do that. So their kids are able to self-reflect and go, "Yeah, the rose of the day was when we, went to the park and blah, 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 and what was your thorn?" And look at it's the end of the day and they're okay, and they could talk about both of them. And, I just think that that needs to be reinvigorated. I don't know if that's a correct word, but reinstitutionalized into our parenting, just these moments of getting clever and creating connection and sharing and celebrating where each is at in life.
Kim, at the beginning of our conversation, when you were talking about your journal, and celebrating this chapter of life called adolescence, I really appreciate that reframe because it's so easy for teenagers and those who love them to get caught up in what's the worst about adolescence, right? It's so easy to go there, and it's so easy to overlook what's special and precious about this unique juncture in life. And you had mentioned, what is the role of the teen and what is the role of the parent of the teen as processes that, dialogues that you have with your clients, and you have some reflection questions in your journals, about that. I'm curious, what would you say is the role of the teen or the role of adolescence itself?
Well, let me turn to that in the book. So you're getting a sneak peek into the book. So again, know that I create a structure before I just ask a question like that. You've been asked other questions and been prepared to answer it. So I'm asking the teen and the parent. They both answer, "What's a parent's job?" And there's a space for them to answer it. And what is a teen's job? And so the teen's job, this is what I wrote. So I have them answer, and then I also share my thoughts as well. But there's a rule in doing the journal is you can't turn the page and see what's on the other page before until you're answering the question yourself. So I wrote for the teen, explore, experiment, fall down, get up, make mistakes, receive guidance, resist guidance, walk, run, rebel, dance, crawl, laugh, cry, and love. That's the job I have for the teen. Okay. So again, I'd love it if you thought about it yourself. And then hopefully if you watch this and then you get the journal, you kind of forget about it and you can just be in this space and answer it in your own way. But the parent I wrote, believe in and foster resilience, encourage curiosity, be a soft place to land, listen, understand, allow autonomy and challenge, enforce guardrails, model healthy behaviors, be perfect and imperfect. So those were just my ideas and thoughts. And it's just so fun to ask someone first and then be like, well, this is what I came up with. Did you have similar answers? Did you have different answers? Would
You know,
you Yeah, go ahead.
you know what is striking me right now about what's so clever, to use your favorite word, about those questions, Kim, is just the fact that you're asking a teenager at all, what should your parents' role be? Like, even before we get to any particular answer, whether it's an answer you supply or an answer they supply, because teenagers find it 1,000 times easier to reject what what's a no than to identify the one thing that's a yes. And
Yeah.
they often completely blindly set up double binds. no-win situations. And this is a feature of borderline personality disorder, but it's also just a feature of teenage behavior. And that's one of the reasons that I teach parents the concept of the double bind in my course, and I design communication techniques specifically for double bind situations. Um, but because teenagers are so prone to putting their parents in no-win situations, asking the teen, "So what should your mom or dad do?" is a radical question. Like, it
Very.
actually makes them think because there's a part of them, what do you want from mom or dad? Well, you want things that some part of you knows are kind of crazy things to want, right? Like, that's not a thing mom and dad are gonna give you, right? If let's take, forget the gender identity nonsense because that's a whole new can of worms, but if you just take classic teenager issues, okay, you wanna stay out till 2 a.m. You wanna drink and drive. You wanna have sex at 14. I mean, whatever crazy thing a teenager is pushing for. Um, if you ask, "Should your mom and dad allow that?" That I would think would get the gears turning a little bit more than the question, "Well, what do you want?" Right? "What do you want?" "I wanna be able to do whatever I want." But if you ask, "Well, what should the role of the parent be?" There's some part of the teenager that's like, well, no, that's not right. Their job shouldn't be to just let me do whatever. I mean, and some teens they are gonna say, "Let me do whatever I want." Right? That is gonna be their answer. But I think some of them, it's gonna get their gears turning just to ask them because it's again, there's 1,000 things they can say they don't want. Okay, but what do they want that actually lines up with what a parent's role realistically can and should be? And who they know their mom and dad to be and to not be as people.
I love how you said that. It gets their gears turning, and you want that. And you have to figure out ways to get their gears turning, to have them thinking differently, and you have to get clever with it. That's what I believe. And I clearly it's part of my gift. I'm really good at taking profound information, profound quotes, profound concepts, life-changing concepts, and making them digestible. And not only digestible, but even fun in the process. I just have that ability to do that. And so I think there's a place for that. And I think we all have a purpose, and that happens to be one of mine. And so it's a thrill for me to make things like this and to show up on your podcast and share because I get to be me. I'm being me. And so that's what we want to do with our kids. When you ask questions that are clever, um, it can kind of steer the conversation to go in the direction you want it to go. Um, it's just so exciting what can come out of that.
Let me ask you this, and if it's the wrong question, we can delete it. But, do your teen clients know that you do things like come on my podcast and talk to transphobic bigots like me? Air quotes, people.
So I use a different name for
Mm,
coaching. But it's so funny. I was talking with Laura Becker. She also is a coach for ROGD kids and parents. And so we are in contact quite a bit, just kind of sharing ideas, sharing our thoughts, just the support. And in the beginning, I feel like a lot of parents have been stripped of their power because of the environment, social media, and a lot of them don't even feel comfortable telling their kid, "We've got a coach or a counselor for you to see," and the kid will do the research and say, "No, I'm not seeing that person." So I help them come up with a script to tell their kid if that's the scenario, and to use my name that I just go by Kimberly because I never use that name. So I'm Kimberly to the kid. And because I'm kind of a different kind of coach, kind of a soul coach, kind of off the beaten path type of coach, we can also present it in that way as well. And it works well. But invariably, That's what I was talking to Laura about is they they're gonna find out invariably that I'm not for the transition of children. Like, they find out. I don't like it to come out because, to be honest, I don't talk about gender at all. It might come up from the kid, um, in our coaching, and, I handle it the way I handle it. I listen and I understand, but I feel like if you get into the weeds of the gender part, then you're gonna miss out on all the nuggets and, the cleverness of getting, like, underneath it, and so kind of steering away from it to me is kind of the best way to do it, and that's kinda how I do it, and I always start with whoever I coach. I call it authenticity map, so I use different personality, structures, I'll even use astrology if people are comfortable with that, Enneagram, to really get a grip on who everyone in the family is and kind of their uniqueness, and I'm all about celebrating, who someone is, their way of being, their their way of emotionally reacting. You can kind of learn that about yourself and do it in a way that isn't, "You're like this." It's not like that at all. The way I do it, it's almost, like, exciting, and people get very excited about, "Oh, yeah, I am like that. Yeah," and then from there, you're feeling good about yourself. Then you can kinda look at, "Oh, these are the areas where, yeah, I do struggle with that, and I could do that differently."
I wanna piggyback on that last point because you're raising an issue that comes up a lot, and I'm glad you mentioned it. When I was a teen, we had teen girl magazines with ridiculous little personality quizzes in them, in addition to things like, horoscopes and things like that. And I think there's a reason that these types of things appeal to teenage girls and young women in particular, because first of all, as women, as females, we have a gift for relational, holistic perception, a gift for communication and emotion. Our brains are more complex and nuanced in those regions than men's brains. There's more cross hemispheric connection in our brains, whereas for men, the connection is more between the front and back of the brain. We use more words to describe emotions and relationship dynamics. And during adolescence, that part of a girl's brain is developing so rapidly. That part of everyone's brain, girls and boys, is developing rapidly. But for girls, the relationship and communication piece is such a big part of who we are, what we're here to do. We're here to relate, we're here to connect, to emote, to love and be loved, to understand feelings. And so, I think teenage girls, since before this current social contagion, have always been drawn to things that offer some kind of structure or scaffolding for that tendency. Whether it's astrology or the Enneagram or Myers-Briggs, it doesn't matter if this stuff is evidence-based or not. People set aside that part of your brain for a minute and just listen to what I'm saying. We're drawn to things that give us a language for speaking about archetypal human experiences. Tarot is in that category too. Look, I don't care if you think it's witchcraft because you're religious, or I don't care if you're the most scientific atheist and you think it's all baloney. I don't care about that. I need you to listen to what I'm saying about our psychology as human beings and as girls and women. We use language to communicate our inner world and to communicate about other people's inner worlds. And it's really marvelous that we have this ability. And it's part of our gift as women because we are nurturers of life, because we need to be able to attune to the emotions of others, because we give birth to children and they are little balls of emotion, and most of it does not come out sounding like rational speech. So, I am speaking out in defense of women and girls' openness and our fascination with personality quizzes and right? And things that give us language for archetypes and emotions and all that kind of stuff. I don't care if you don't respect that, listener. And in fact, I'm even going to go so far as to say that I've met certain people who are so biased against that kind of stuff that it conveys a certain sexism to their daughters. So cut it out if that's you, because if you have an ROGD teen daughter and you're looking down on that stuff as silly, you might be part of the problem here. Okay. So, in defense of women and girls' love of things that give us language for psychology, relationships, communication, and all of that, in defense of that, what's the point I'm trying to make? My point is that girls' brains are going through a revolution in adolescence of rapid growth and pruning of the ability to conceptualize these things. And there's a fascination there. And that fascination can become unproductive, self centered, narcissistic, and navel gazing, even solipsistic. But it can also be part of what prepares us to have rich interpersonal lives, which, and that's the foundation of health and happiness. So, you want to let your girl, especially a girl, have some healthy outlets for this fascination and cleverly steer her away from the unhealthy aspects. And the thing is, the gender identity nonsense gives her a lot of unhealthy saccharine facsimiles of this, right? So all of the different terms, the made up terms, the made up flags, right? These are appealing to the same trait in your daughter as the 17 magazine personality quizzes and astrology horoscope columns appeal to. And it's part of the reason why when I describe the sort of personality clusters of these girls, this tends to be the girly girl. This tends to be the straight, normal girl whose deepest fear is of being basic or of being not attractive enough as a normal girl. And so she turns trans to get a sense of specialness. That girl has a different profile than the girl who is naturally tomboyish and likely to be same sex attracted. Because that girl, that tomboyish, same sex attracted girl, she dresses like a slob and wants to do adventure sports. And she has a girlfriend. Okay, that is a picture. That is an archetype of a girl who is the daughter of many of my clients. But the girly girl who flips and identifies as trans and denies that she's a girly girl is fascinated with the labels and the pronoun pins and the hair colors and the convoluted explanations for why she can wear eyeliner and still be a boy. Okay, that girl is gonna love Kim's workbook, is my point, okay? Because these girls need ways to be fascinated with the inner world and ways to seek a language and a conceptual framework for it, and they're trying to develop emotional intelligence here. That's my point.
I would also say the tomboy
Mm.
also, I do authenticity mapping on every client. And
Mm.
so it's not that I don't push any of this on anyone, but I will start with the Myers-Briggs personality test. It's a 10-minute test, developed by psychologists. And just for the people out there who are kind of bucking up against that, understand that your teen is in identity confusion stage. Again, I go back to basic psychology 101 that is somehow lost, but they're in the stage of identity confusion. So again, I'm giving them some seeds with roots because what we do is they take the test. A teen can take that test, takes 10 minutes, and they answer questions. Kids love answering questions about themselves. We come up with a result. We talk about the result together. That's a whole session. Your teen is telling me, yeah, I'm like this. No, I'm not quite like that. I'm learning so much about them. So see it as a tool for sharing, for exploring, for learning. But what I also believe is so phenomenal about this is they are stuck in a world where a man looks like this and a woman looks like this. And I must be a man because I have these traits. But when you do personality, it's male or female. It doesn't matter. You can have a male that's this personality type or a female that's this personality type. And so it's to kind of get rid of some of these gender stereotypes that they've been clinging to that says, I'm a girl, but I must be a boy stuck in a girl's body. So it
And you're
breaks.
not doing that by fighting the ideology. You're not doing that by telling them
No,
gender is bogus. You're actually
no,
just feeding the part of them that wants some sort of personality typing system. You're like, okay, well, here's a system, right? You're giving them something else to put that tendency into. They don't even know that you're steering them away from gender. You're just giving them
no.
more language, more tools, more
That's how
concepts
you
to
do
play
it.
with.
That's how it's done. I'm telling you, it's how it's done. You have to do it this way. You cannot attack these teens with their gender ideology. It has to be through the back door. I really believe that. Um, and you plant so many seeds, and just like if you've studied the detransitioners, one day they wake up and go, this bizarre thing they learned or saw or heard, maybe from their coach, that made them go, this is bogus. I can't uphold this ideology anymore. And so, there's that sensation you have from the parents too. They just want it so bad, and I get that. But it is a process, it's a journey, and it's planting those seeds and believing in their soul on that journey as more is revealed to them in these clever ways.
I love this phrase that we've been working with today, believing in their soul.
That's one thing you can start today for those who feel so disempowered and in despair. It's one thing you can absolutely take away and start working on.
Well, I think that's a beautiful note to end on. So, Kim, where can people go to find your journals, to learn about your coaching services, all that good stuff?
I just have a link tree. I have it very simple, so I think you've got the link and you'll post it in the show notes. And I also have links to the journals. This is the teen journal. I don't have the parent one right here next to me, but there's a link to it. But my link tree will have, I have YouTube videos that kind of explain what I do. But yeah, and I love creating journals or books to make something that seems very difficult and not tangible, but to bring it in, bring it close to you, and make it easy and simple for you to process. And I do believe that parents are they're in so need of something that just seems simple that I can do. It's like, okay, start here. But I will say that depending on your family situation, I do believe that I would need to go through the teen journal with the kid if, there's just too much strife or you don't even feel like you can create that connection.
Well, I'll make sure that your link tree is in the show notes. And thank you so much for another wonderful conversation.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening to You Must Be Some Kind of Therapist. If you enjoyed this episode, kindly take a moment to rate, review, share, or comment on it using your platform of choice. And of course, please remember, podcasts are not therapy, and I'm not your therapist. Special thanks to Joey Pecoraro for this awesome theme song, Half Awake, and to Pods by Nick for production. For help navigating the impact of the gender craze on your family, be sure to check out my program for parents, ROGD Repair. Any resource you heard mentioned on this show, plus how to get in touch with me, can all be found in the notes and links below. Rain or shine, I hope you will step outside to breathe the air today. In the words of Max Ehrmann, with all its sham, drudgery, and broken dreams, it is still a beautiful world.